Welcome back. So a few weeks ago, I made a video called Lab, or Learning and Benchmarking, otherwise known as How to Effectively Learn and Process New Information. Well, we're back, and it took me a while for me to put together my thoughts into a coherent format. But I think I have a good enough format for me to try to explain my thinking here. Learning and benchmarking. How to quickly learn and process new information and retain it. And what I mean by retain it is actually learn the information so well that it moves from your monkey brain, right? Imagine your brain as two parts. So imagine your mind as a bunch of different dividers. At the very forefront is your monkey brain. This is where your thoughts occur. This is where your planning occurs. This is where the thinking is done. Behind the monkey brain, we'll call this lizard brain. Notice that your lizard brain takes up a much bigger portion of your brain than the monkey brain does. Your lizard brain is where stuff just happens automatically. Do you remember being taught how to tie your shoes as a child? I kind of do. Since then, it almost does not occur to me how to tie my shoes, right? The knots to tie my shoes happen more or less on autopilot. I could be thinking about other stuff, doing other stuff. I could be actively planning future plans. But as long as I know my shoes need to be tied, I can bend over and tie them within a few seconds. When you're learning, what you want to do is take that new piece of information you're trying to process right here, and you want to move it from your monkey brain into your lizard brain. When you no longer have to think about what you're trying to do, and it becomes almost automatic, you have achieved mastery and learned what you needed to learn. At one point, as a child, you had to remember and think about how to tie your shoes. But over time, through learning and benchmarking by practicing tying your shoes, it moved from monkey brain all the way over here into lizard brain and autonomous function. So let's start with the first half of this entire process, the learning process. The first thing you have to figure out is, how do you learn? Let's start with the first part of this process, learning, right? It's two stages. You learn and then you benchmark. But the learning stage of the two is, I'd say, about 60% of it. Benchmarking is important, but how you learn is going to be the most important part, right? Not everybody learns the same way, and not every method of learning is going to be effective for you as it is for me. The second part of learning is, how well do you understand, which is where the benchmarking portion of this entire stack comes into play. There's different levels to understanding. Sure, you learned something and you can recall the facts about it and pass an exam, but how well do you understand what you can recall? If you had to explain to somebody who had no knowledge of what you were trying to speak of how what you just learned worked, would you be able to? It gets deeper than that. To test if you really understand what you just remembered, you also have to apply it. If you just learned a networking concept about DHCP and DNS, could you then go and apply that in real life? Could you set up a DHCP server? Could you troubleshoot DNS issues? Stuff like that. So to truly understand if you learned something, you have to benchmark yourself, or you have to have somebody else benchmark your knowledge. Now, the old idea of learning was that there are different learning styles, but there's not really learning styles because a lot of different learning styles tend to overlap. If you are a visual and auditory learner and you're learning by watching videos, how is that different than learning by having someone teach you how to do it in person? If you're a visual learner and you're reading a text to learn something, is that you being a reading-based learner or a visual learner? If you have to look at a screen to apply a concept, does that mean you're kinesthetically learning or visually learning? You get what I'm saying? Learning isn't just one dedicated style. It's actually a mix of different styles. What you have to do is find a method that works best for you. For me, I noticed that I can't focus on videos. Watching somebody else do something, my mind drifts off. I get distracted easily, right? However, if I have to read how to do something in an article and then apply those concepts myself and think about how I would convert what I just read into actual actions, that is a far more effective method for me. I've also noticed that taking notes on what I read helps me retain that information better. So what you have to do is be willing to try new methods to learn, right? Go with the path of least resistance. Be like water. If you notice you have trouble sitting down and reading a book about a concept, don't try to force yourself to read the book. Go and watch videos. The videos might be boring, but you'll be more likely to finish learning the material because they're less difficult for you to consume than text, and vice versa. If videos are boring and reading's interesting, go that way. If watching videos and reading text is boring and you're more the just get your hands dirty type of guy, figure out how to lab what you want to learn. If you want to learn about DNS, but you don't actually want to sit down and read an article, well, the only way to learn at that point is to set up a DNS server and then mess around and break stuff in your own environment to see how things work. Take note of what you think. Take note of how you think it works. Break it, fix it, and then write down how it really works to see where the gaps in your understanding was. Basically, you have to be a little self-aware here. And if you lack self-awareness, well, you either need a close friend or a trusted enemy to give you the truth. So at the end of the day, you'll spend a lot of time learning, but you'll also spend a lot of time confirming your knowledge with benchmarking. And the benchmarking also sets another purpose. Remember what I said earlier in the video where you don't truly understand something until you have moved it from your monkey brain to your lizard brain? The benchmarking helps you with this process. Every time you benchmark your knowledge, you engage in repetition. And repetition is actually the process by which you move information from monkey brain into lizard brain, right? So by benchmarking and learning and engaging in this process, you're moving the piece of information you want to learn from your monkey brain into your lizard brain.